How many things have you not tried because you're afraid of being rejected? As a musician, I've auditioned for dozens and dozens of festivals, orchestras, programs, things like that throughout my career. And this is the simplest way I can explain how to handle rejection, not have your self-worth affected, and keep going and become totally resilient. I'm Chelsea. I'm a flutist and a mindset coach for musicians. Today, we're going to talk about how rejection doesn't bother me that much anymore and why, and what my process is, because there is a process, very intentional process behind dealing with rejection. I think the first mistake so many people make is not having a plan. A lot of times we just go audition for things, try to compete in things, and we don't have a plan for how we're going to treat ourselves after the audition or competition or whatever it is. Or this could just be in your everyday life. Like maybe you're trying to ask someone out and you are really afraid to be rejected because afterwards your brain's gonna make it mean all these terrible things about you. First part of the plan, think of the worst case scenario. Let's take an audition for example. You maybe don't advance past the first round. That in itself is a fact. What you're afraid of isn't the fact, but rather the emotion that accompanies the circumstance that you're experiencing. We're not afraid of being cut from an audition. We're afraid of feeling rejection, disappointment, embarrassment, humiliation, all those good feelings. But if you're a classical musician like me, you know that the likelihood for rejection is super high for any audition. There might be over 100 people at an audition and one person maybe gets the job. There's also been a lot of no hires recently, which I think is just adding fuel to the fire here. Since we know the likelihood of disappointment and embarrassment and rejection is super high, we have to know that it's a possibility going in, and actually it's a pretty high likelihood. And if you're not willing to feel disappointment and rejection and embarrassment, the higher the stakes become in your mind. If you aren't willing to feel those emotions, then a lot is riding on this audition, and it's not just trying to get into that orchestra or win that competition. It's actually the thing that's going to make you not feel negative emotions, emotional pain. So why does rejection feel so terrible? It's a survival mechanism. Thousands of years ago, when we lived in groups of 100 to 150 people, being rejected from the group meant we would literally die in the woods alone. So being part of a group is actually something that sets off our survival instincts. That's why performance anxiety is a thing. That's why auditions feel terrible, because we're literally playing so we can be part of the group, right? We're trying to perform our best so we can be part of the group. And our brain software has not updated to modern day. So our brain still thinks it's gonna die if it's rejected. And honestly, side note, this is where self-doubt comes from too. Self-doubt is a survival mechanism. If your brain can convince you that you're not good enough and you shouldn't be doing this, then it won't have to feel that emotional pain, that disappointment, that rejection. So don't believe your self-doubt. Rejection feels terrible because we're humans, and that's how we evolved. So what do we do about it? We plan. Think about the worst case scenario. It's that emotion that you're going to feel. It's that emotional pain you're going to go through. It's not the actual logistics of being rejected. It's the learning to feel disappointment and embarrassment or whatever emotion comes with being rejected that's going to get you through this and going to make you resilient. If you get really good at sitting with yourself and processing the emotion of disappointment, then you don't feel like you're going to die every single time. But most of the time, this isn't our first instinct. It's usually, oh, I'm not good enough, so now I need to practice more, and now I need to take more auditions, and I need more experience, and I need extra outside things. When really all we need is to hold space for ourselves to process these emotions. And I want you to think about this. If you get really good at feeling emotions, then you will become so resilient because your brain and body know that you can handle anything and still have your own back through the process. You're not beating yourself up every time you don't advance in an audition. This is actually a superpower. Most people cannot sit with their emotions and disappointment, which brings me to my next point. Emotions are just vibrations in your body. They don't mean anything about you. Emotions are feelings to be felt, not problems to be solved. If we resist emotions, they persist. You've probably heard this before. Since emotions are just the physical feelings in the body that we have based on the thoughts that we are thinking, they don't mean anything more than, oh, I guess I'm having a thought that's making me feel not so great, disappointed, rejected, not good enough. It isn't the rejection itself, it's what we're making it mean about us that is making us feel so bad. That's not to say that you won't feel bad after a rejection ever again. But it's good to know and good to uncover what your brain is making it mean about you if you're feeling extra rejection sensitive. Now I make a plan for how I'm going to treat myself and what I'm going to make this circumstance mean about me when I get rejected, not if. If I don't get rejected, great. That's amazing too. But I want to have a plan in place so I can take care of myself on the back end. Now picture being in that moment. You know it. We've all been there. That moment where you feel rejected, maybe you have a knot in the pit of your stomach, maybe you feel inadequate. I know my chest feels really hollow when I feel inadequate or rejected or disappointed, and everything kind of feels a little bit heavier. What are you going to say to yourself in that moment? Decide ahead of time. What are you going to make this circumstance mean about you? Hopefully nothing. Please don't make it mean anything about you. Unless you want to make it mean, oh, this is just the next step on the way to actually winning one, obviously. Hold space for yourself to feel what you feel in your body. And if you want a video on how to process emotions, I have one linked below. And really ask yourself, what do you want to hear in this moment? You know what you want to hear better than anyone else. Do you ever call someone when you're in one of these moments and they don't quite say exactly what you want to hear? And it kind of just makes you feel worse and you're like, oh, I just want to hang up. Right? Take responsibility for knowing you are the only one that knows what's best for you in that moment and give that to yourself. So what happens when you get good at this plan? When you get good at feeling these hard emotions, you put yourself out there so much more. It doesn't seem so scary. Disappointment and rejection doesn't seem so bad because you've done it so many times and you've taken care of yourself through that process and proved to your brain that you're not going to die from rejection. You can move through these moments and be on your own team without trash talking yourself all the way home. Simultaneously, I think it's so important to work on your self-concept. I want you to think about what your story is about yourself and what is possible for you. Do you constantly tell yourself you're not good enough? Do you believe that whatever dream for yourself you have is possible for you? Actually visualizing it in your lifetime. What is the story that you tell yourself about your ability? Do you compare yourself to others and then think they're way more capable than you? This is your self-concept. It's the story you tell about yourself. People that say, oh, I'm more of an orchestral musician. I'm just not a soloist. Oh, I'm just so much better at technical things and not as much at lyrical things. Your self-concept comes after the statement, I'm just the kind of person that fill in the blank. Or I'm just not the kind of person that. I used to think I'm just not the kind of person that just gets chosen for everything. Oof, did that work against me? That is until one day I decided that I would write down every day, I'm just the kind of person that gets everything that she applies for. Every day I write that down. And I've changed my self-concept because of it. And I approach things differently because I am under the assumption that I'm going to get the things that I apply for, therefore they're worth working for. If you think that you're not good enough to get the things you're applying for, you're living in cognitive dissonance because your brain is subconsciously thinking that this isn't worth it, and then you're trying to hustle your way through it. You're always out of alignment. So one of these stories creates confidence and one of them creates insecurity. This practice has fundamentally changed the way I view myself and my potential and ability. If I'm secure in my self-concept and I know I'm the one that I'd want to choose at the end of the day, then other people cannot choose me, and that's okay. And just because they didn't choose me doesn't mean I'm not good enough. It just means they didn't choose me. And I don't have mind control. I can't make people choose me for things. At the end of the day, What you think about you matters absolutely the most. And if you haven't chosen what to think about yourself intentionally, it's really easy to abdicate power to whatever audition committee is deciding the result of whatever you're doing. This is such a quick way to burn out and really get discouraged. If you want to become resilient, you have to get really good at feeling emotions, and you have to build your self-concept. If you want to learn more about building your self-concept, check out the next video here. I wish you the best with all of your future rejections.